Hello and good evening. It's Beyond the Headlines. I'm Odette, Campbell, your host. Tonight we have in studio with us Dr. George Mitchell. He's the coordinator of the COVID-19 committee. We have Dr. Shauna, Cuffie, clinical counselor, Ministry of Education. As we have been doing for the past couple of weeks, we've been taking a global look at what's been happening, and we will be joined by 3 people on Skype tonight. We will be crossing over to Dr. Glen Richard Oles, the president of St. George's University. We have Juhel, Browne, the political editor, CCN TV6 in Trinidad. Mr. Stetson Babb, he is the manager of news and current affairs, Starcom network in Barbados. And Mr. Milton Walker, he is the manager of the group head of news and sports over at TVJ RJR Gleaner. So we have a packed panel ahead of us tonight, packed discussions, and we'll be looking forward to hearing from you, members of the public. As we know, it seems as if the world has come to a standstill, but yet there's a lot of energy, people panic buying, a lot of things happening, a lot of testing going on. We heard in the news earlier from our own Dr. George Mitchell what the ministry has been doing in Grenada to ensure that we keep a check on things and make sure that we're safe. And to address that whole issue of panic buying and all of that energy that's out there, we have Dr. Shauna Cuffie. So, lady and gentlemen, we are happy to have you, but we have some people who've been on the trot for the last 8 days and could not get a break. So we would first go over to Jamaica and Trinidad. We'll speak with our colleagues, and then we come back in studio and speak with you if that's okay with you, because we have a packed panel. Like we said, we have to go to Dr. Oles in the US. So let's start with Trinidad and Tobago. Juhel, your country had press conferences yesterday and today, and also in Jamaica there were press conferences. Breaking news coming out of Jamaica a short while ago. Juhel, tell us, what's the state of play in Trinidad?
Well, what happened earlier today, there was a special cabinet meeting chaired by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. After that meeting, he held a press conference with 3 of his cabinet members, the National Security Minister, the Health Minister, and the Finance Minister. The Prime Minister, Dr. Rowley, announced that Cabinet has decided that for a 14-day period, no non-nationals will be allowed to enter Trinidad and Tobago, except in certain cases, such as those working for CARPA, for example. But basically, he says that for the most part, at least for a 14-day period, I think that should begin, that travel ban should begin from midnight tomorrow, that Trinidad and Tobago is more or less going to be cut off from the international community by air and by sea, in light of the 4 cases that have been confirmed in Trinidad and Tobago. It's one of the measures that he announced as part of the government's efforts, as it says, to prevent the further spread of COVID-19 in Trinidad and Tobago. He also announced a call or instruction, a call for bars in Trinidad and Tobago to be closed during a 14-day period, again, to prevent the issue of people congregating, gathering, and also is calling on gatherings to be no less than 25 persons. He has also announced that the initial 1-week closure of all educational facilities in Trinidad and Tobago, which began effectively this week, will now be extended to April 20th, and that there are policies and issues that they are reviewing in terms of also, as he had put it, putting things in place and putting the finance minister in charge of that, for any sort of financial assistance, that those who would be economically displaced, let's say, by the closure of bars and so on over the next 14 days, or those who already may be under economic difficulty in terms of grants and so on, that they would be looking at that to ensure that those who are economically vulnerable are taken care of. As the Prime Minister is saying that these measures are meant, it's not a state of emergency, but that he says that Trinidad and Tobago is in an emergency situation, but not, the government has not taken the route of a state of emergency or a curfew. And he says that these measures are meant to protect the wider public and, of course, those that they have identified to be the most vulnerable in terms of COVID-19.
So, Juhel, how have people responded to the measures announced by the government?
Well, thus far, we've heard mixed reviews. One of my colleagues did go to a couple of bars in Port of Spain just to get a sense of what they are hearing. And it does seem that there are bar owners who are taking the call fairly seriously. We did just get a release a short time ago from Prestige Holdings, which owns the franchise for KFC, Starbucks, Subway, and TGI in Trinidad. And they are saying that they will only allow for curbside pickup or delivery, and they'll not have in-house dining. Now, the Prime Minister did say that they have not called on restaurants to close at this time, certainly, but that they are requesting that restaurants do not have any in-house dining, but can operate via pickup deliveries, curbside deliveries, as he had put it. And at least one of the franchise holders of these restaurants or chains fast food outlets that I just mentioned has certainly seemed to be taking heed to that call.
Okay, so Juhel, we cross back to you in a minute. Let's cross over to Jamaica, where we have Milton Walker. He's the group head of news and sports, the RGR Gleaner group. Milton, good evening, and how are things in Jamaica?
Good evening. Well, we're in many ways similar to Trinidad, or measures which were announced just this evening at a press conference, which ended a few minutes, about 6:30 thereabouts. The government has taken some measures. First, that all travelers will have to self-quarantine if they came from a country where there's community spread. Now, of course, that's a little vague because the United States has had some community spread, but we don't know, or it appears that they are not on that list. And the reason being is simply because that's our largest tourism market, and there's still a lot of concern here in Jamaica about the tourism product. Tourism, of course, is the lifeline for a number of parishes on the North Coast, St. James with Montego Bay, the capital, in Hanover, parts of Westmoreland, St. Anne, Trelawney, and we've already had cruise ships being banned. So those areas are, the government, I know, is really concerned about the economic fallout, and the Prime Minister was keen to stress that we're not shutting down the country, we're not shutting down the economy. However, effective this Wednesday, that's March 18, there'll be a new policy. All non-essential work, that's for the public and private sector, should be done at home. They want to minimize the number of persons who are traveling or out on the roads. They instituted a new restriction. There would be no gathering over 20 persons. Naturally, this impacts funerals and weddings, and they've asked that if those are being held, that they be limited to close family members. Government says they know it's difficult, but they're asking, please, for persons to adhere to that new rule. Bars are to be closed, nightclubs, entertainment places, anywhere where more than 20 people would be gathered, that would be affected. Restaurants and cook shops also, they are allowed to open, but no more than 20 persons will be allowed inside at any given time, and they must maintain the social distance as well. Markets will be only open between 6 a.m. and 2 p.m. And if you know the Jamaican setup, markets are the lifeline in a number of towns. The largest market in the island, the Coronation Market, literally hundreds of millions of dollars in that market district is exchanged each week. And many farmers, small farmers, come to trade their produce in that market. It was closed Saturday evening at 8 p.m. for a deep cleaning exercise, and it should reopen on Thursday morning. Supermarkets, wholesales, shops, and pharmacies are also being allowed to open, but based on what the Prime Minister said, I get the impression they want them to have no more than 20 persons in each of these outlets, or if it's a big supermarket and poor people can maintain social distance. I know it's a gray area, and it's very tricky, and it's new territory. We've never been in this situation before.
And as you say that, Milton,
go ahead.
How are people taking all of this? There's a kind of slang, they're taking it lying down?
Uh, it's difficult because literally, as I said, these measures are 1 hour old. So we have people are trying to get reactions, going to go out on the roads are out on the roads. So I haven't gotten any direct feedback yet from the roads. I must say I've been a little busy, so I've not been monitoring what our radio current affairs program, which is still on air or was on air at the time, did get from, say, members of the public. Also, just a couple more. Bus carrying passengers will only, that's the JUTC, which is the bus service for the corporate area. That's the Kingston metropolitan area and for Spanish Town and Portmore, and the Montego Bay bus service. That's a government-owned service. They will only take seated passengers, so there will be no standing passengers on these buses. Taxis also, and in Jamaica, we have the robot taxis, or what you call maxi taxis elsewhere in the Caribbean. They normally, some of them are allowed to take 5 passengers or 6. The rule is that they must carry 1 less passenger than licensed, right? And just a couple more things to note. We have 12 confirmed cases. The government did say it was 15 last night, but they said the 5 which were added were from the preliminary test, and the secondary test which came back were negative for 3 of them. So it's actually only two new cases. I'm a little puzzled why they gave the 5 number out when they hadn't done the secondary test. So we're actually back down to 12, or we're down to 12, not 15 as we learned this morning. 43 persons are in home quarantine, excluding the town, the neighborhoods of 7 and 8 miles, Bull Bay, which is east of Kingston, and that includes roughly 12,000 persons. Those 2 communities are under quarantine. The army and the police have been out there since Friday night, maintaining that quarantine for that person. There are some persons there, we have spoken to them, that have complained that they don't have enough food. I know water was a problem. A lot of people said, we drink bottled water, and they haven't been able to get bottled water because Saturday would have been the day when they would have gone out to make purchases, and they weren't able to do so. The government has made visits and I think brought some supplies in for some persons, but I think tomorrow they'll also have to make a renewed effort to make sure that all these persons have supplies. There was a question whether or not persons would be allowed to take supplies to relatives or friends who live in those communities, and the government said no, they want to discourage that totally.
All right. Thank you so much, Milton. We know you've been on the trot, and we look forward to the continued updates from you. We want to just cross back quickly to Juhel, because we know Juhel has been held on a tight leash by the News and Current Affairs Department for the past week as well. Juhel, just before you go, we know Trinidad, we've seen some of the pictures coming out. Some of, I think, Price Smart it was, people have been queuing up at the supermarkets. What's that been like?
Right, so last week, Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, this was just before the confirmation of the first COVID-19 case. But it seemed as if that people who had concerns about what could have been developing at that time decided to descend upon Price Smart in particular, which is a members shopping club. And we saw the images of the buying of toilet paper and hand sanitizer, Lysol, and so on. The Prime Minister today has discouraged or sought to discourage panic buying. I think what is happening is that, just as Milton would have said, Trinidad and Tobago, much like the rest of the region and the world, facing a new dimension, a new phase of existence. We are basically now going from shaking hands and hugging friends or people who, when you go out and you interact with, how you're going, you shake your hand. Now you have to social distance. That is an adjustment of itself. In Trinidad, the word liming, of course, gathering at bars or even just people getting together in maybe large numbers, maybe more than 25. That is also a change that has to be made, but the government is insisting that the measures that are taking place, that they have decided upon now, are meant to basically keep any numbers low, and also, again, the point of those who are vulnerable, of those with autoimmune deficiencies, those of a certain age, the elderly, and so on. That's the message we've been getting. The issue now, I think, for a lot of people is also one of the economic challenges. If bars and they are seemingly taking heed, or at least some of them so far, and I imagine that others are doing so. Then you also have the issue of the workers who work in those bars, for example, in terms of their economic situation. If they are not working, the bar is not in operation, how are they to be paid? There are those who work on commission or the self-employed. The government did announce on Sunday, the Labour Minister announced a pandemic leave type arrangement to be initiated in the public service, and is encouraging the private sector to follow in that direction once persons have exhausted their regular leave, sick leave, and any extension of sick leave. This is new territory, certainly, that Trinidad and Tobago and the rest of the world is navigating. It is certainly creating some sense of concern, some sense of panic in some quarters. The Prime Minister is basically saying it's all hands on deck. He did receive, well, the opposition leader said that she has extended an invitation to him via a letter sent to him, she said, that would be meant to create, to allow for bipartisan conversations between the government and the opposition. The Prime Minister
so I guess
said, well, if that's the case, he's welcomed it, but he did have some concerns about statements made by the opposition leader in terms of his trip to Ghana and so on recently. So we have to see what happens there. But certainly, we are now entering a new phase, and life, as one minister put it, is not the same anymore.
Thank you so much, Juhel. I know you've been on a tight schedule, so we want to thank you so much. And Milton, we'd like to thank you as well. And we will be linking up with you from
Just
time
wanted
to time.
to say one more thing, Odette.
Sure.
You know, Jamaica, like the Caribbean, going to church on a Sunday is a big deal. And certainly Saturday, because Jamaica does have a very large, in fact, the Seventh-day Adventist is the largest denomination in Jamaica. And from Saturday through to yesterday, churches were pretty much empty by and large. Attendance is down to 10%, 20%, those kinds of numbers. Lately, a lot of churches have had services being streamed, so a lot of persons stayed at home and watched services online. Some churches would normally have 2 services on a Sunday morning or Saturday morning. They're only going to have 1, and maintaining social distance in the seating, but they encourage persons to sit at home and watch the stream as well. So that's a huge change for Jamaica, which pretty much has a large population, part of the population attending church on a Saturday or Sunday morning.
Thank you so much for that input. It's always great to know what's happening in our neighboring islands, and we will continue to be in touch with our neighbors in the coming days. Thanks a million to, that was Milton Walker, RJR Gleaner Group, and Juhel Browne.
Good luck, Juhel.
Juhel Browne.
All the best to everybody.
Yeah. Good night and take care. Thank you so much.
A new normal, yeah.
New normal.
A new normal, yes, exactly, a new normal. And we may smile with each other right now, but it's not a laughing matter.
No,
it's not a laughing matter.
That people, you know, I do hope that we all find a way to manage this without the panic and any other fear overwhelming our societies, and that we will, the government says, the governments, I think, across the region and around the world are saying that this will end at some point. But I think between now and then, there's going to be certainly, as Milton said, the new normal.
The new normal. And since we can't even extend the handshake, the most I can do is wave goodbye.
Well, this is what people have been doing in church, the elbow.
Yeah. We do the elbow. Thank
All
you
right.
so much, gentlemen. I really appreciate it. Dr. Cuffie and Dr. Mitchell, thank you so much for your patience, but we did have to accommodate them. They've been at work since like 5 o'clock this morning. So let's turn all the eyes now onto Grenada. And Dr. Mitchell, you're going to start us off. What is the state of play? What's happening in Grenada as far as COVID-19 is concerned?
Well, let me say a pleasant good night to your listenership. I know that the program is an iconic program in Grenada, and you have listeners from all over the world, so I want to say good night. It's good to be here. The last time I remember being here was during the Zika outbreak. So it is kind of it's kind of really coincidental, you know. The last epidemic we had was when I was here. But having said that, yes, Odette, we are in the preparatory phase mode. We are trying to do all that we possibly can with the resources that we have to ready ourselves for bracing ourselves, so to speak, for the outbreak, and to minimize as much as we possibly can the catastrophic scenes that we're seeing on the international, bigger industrialized countries. So we are taking, you know, all the precautionary measures we can and preparing our systems as best we can. And with that, we are asking our people to come with us.
And Dr. Cuffie, we'll be cutting the commercial break, but quickly we heard Juhel in Trinidad talking a lot about the panic buying, and that's your role. I'm certain just before we cut to the break, you want to say to somebody, I'm here to tell you, you should not panic, you shouldn't fear, but be rational in your approach.
Well, I am going to say good night to all the listeners. I'm simply Shauna Thomas Cuffie, and as we prepare to reduce the spread of this latest coronavirus called COVID-19 pandemic, I want to let you know that it's perfectly normal to feel anxious about this emerging health crisis. It is a crisis, but tonight I'm going to bring some PFA, which is called psychological first aid, and we hope that together we can weather the storm, go through and cope well.
Thank you so much for those introductory remarks. As mentioned earlier, we will be joined shortly by Dr. Glen Richard Oles. He's the president of St. George's University, and we'll also be crossing over to Barbados, where we'll be joined by Stetson Babb. He's the head of news and current affairs, Starcom. That's one of the One Caribbean Media Grouping companies. So do stay with us. We take a commercial break, and we'll get into in-depth discussions when we come back. Stay with us.
Inside that counts. Inside your house, that is. With Beacon, you can ensure everything inside your home with our Easy Buy contents packages. Just click, match, and buy for maximum peace of mind with minimum fuss. Log on to beacon.co.tt and choose your package today.
Want to learn a skill and earn a CVQ? The National Training Agency is inviting unemployed men and women between the ages of 16 and 35 to apply for Skills Training CVQ Level 2 under the Climate Smart Agriculture and Rural Enterprise Program. The occupational skills areas open for applications include beekeeping, allied healthcare services, community tourism, live sound recording engineering, and small engine repairs. Applications may be completed at the NTA's office on Belmont Road, St. George's, Grand Quarters Office, Lower Depredin Street Wall, Labukan Creative Center, the GCNA Complex, Kirani James Boulevard, or Sedu's office in Grand Bra, not later than March 21st, 2020. For more information, call the NTA at 435-9092 or 435-9093 or email info@grenada.nta.gd.
Total is one of the world's largest oil companies with a top quality line of lubricants. Total Lubricants has a full product line from passenger cars, motorcycle, heavy industrial equipment, mining, trucking, agriculture, and manufacturing machines and vehicles. Total Lubricants, winning championships in motorsports, including Formula One and World Rally Championships. Total Lubricants are available at all Rubis service stations, leading automotive shops, and distributed by Huggins.
How going on, boy?
Hey, good old things.
Hey, easy.
Yeah.
Boy, in line, boy. Your house looking a real good day.
Boy, it's thanks to the hard-working and professional staff at the Housing Authority of Grenada. They handled me real nice. They did my plan, they did the construction, and I didn't even have to worry about a thing. They were there with me every step of the way, supervising the job, asking me about my concerns, giving me feedback as the house took shape. They were there from start to finish, and even put the keys in the palm of my hand. I give them an A++ for customer service.
Oh, it's people from housing bad, boy.
Boy, not bad. Excellent. If you're thinking about constructing your home, why not consult the Housing Authority of Grenada? You could visit them right down in the Sandino complex, or give them a call, 440-1015 or 440-1016. Or check out their website, hag473.com. They go handle you. They go jog your blocks, they go draw your plan, they go tote your materials. Hey man, where you going? The Housing Authority of Grenada is your choice for affordable housing and a stress-free construction experience.
Calling all vehicle owners. Inspection and licensing continues, and at Hubbard's we want you to be ready. From February 16th to March 31st, registration numbers 2,501 to 5,000 with single registration letter, or registration numbers 251 to 500 with plural registration letters will receive 11% off new torque tires and PowerMax batteries. Don't get caught unprepared. Visit us today at the Motor Department in Mountgay or the Tire Bay in Grand Anse near to the building supplies.
Angie, don't you know that you should not fly kites near electrical poles and wires? You should only fly it in open areas. If the kite gets stuck, it can cause power outages throughout the village.
Then I'll just pull it down, Johnny. Simple.
No, you shouldn't do that. You can get shocked. You should call Glen at 237 and they will come and help.
Alright.
Never fly kites near to power lines. If your kite ever gets tangled, do not attempt to remove it on your own. A message from Glen, energizing our Grenada.
Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. And as mentioned earlier, we have in studio with us Dr. George Mitchell. He is the coordinator, the COVID-19 committee, and Ms. Shauna Cuffie, she's a clinical counselor, Ministry of Education. We have successfully made contact via Skype with Dr. G. Richard Olds, St. George's University, and Stetson Babb, Starcom, Barbados. Gentlemen, welcome.
Good night. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Mitchell, people are asking from the last they heard from you, from the committee, from the government, what is the latest?
I reckon that you're asking ladies in terms of testing, in terms of numbers, and that kind of stuff. Well, the latest, and I said it this morning, I said it midday today, is that as we speak, we have no confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Grenada. And I want to repeat, no confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Grenada. We have carried out 10 tests, and that is being done for us at the lab in Cuffie in Trinidad, which serves a number of countries in the area, and all of them came back negative. That does not mean, of course, that there is not a high probability that the virus is circulating here, but until we find the virus, we cannot say that we have it.
And some people would hear you say find the virus, and they're wondering about that report that came out of St. Lucia of a visitor Grenada who then traveled to St. Lucia and then presented symptoms. I know you said that you've been trying to do some contact tracing. Any success?
Yes, we did a wonderful job, I believe. Yes, I am proud to say that we have Dr. Sean Charles, who is a very dedicated, excellent epidemiologist, and he has been ably assisted by some quite experienced and eminent professionals at SGU, particularly Windruff. And they have formed a team to ensure that no stone is left unturned, so to speak. So they have looked at the history of that traveler. They have been at the hotel, and they have, in a scientific way, looked at what needs to be done next in terms of who are the most likely persons who are exposed, and have tested some of them. And I can report that we have sent 8 additional swabs to CARFER today, and hopefully the results will be available tomorrow.
So 8 people who have been on that contact trace list have been identified, and you have sent the samples down?
Absolutely, that's correct.
Okay, anybody in quarantine?
Those persons, we have asked them to stay isolated, to stay in quarantine. Those persons, yes.
So that's self-isolation or the quarantine center?
Self-isolation and quarantine is sort of like the same. We're using it interchangeably here. So they are not in our quarantine centers that we've been talking about all the time, but we have asked them to stay at home.
Okay. Some people are saying that, let me ask you, at what point did the Ministry of Health or your committee get the report about that visitor who turned up in St. Lucia?
I know where that question is going, but I tell you what.
Question,
yes, no, I know, but I know where the question is going. It's fine, but that news came to us after 4 in the afternoon.
On Thursday?
It was Thursday or Friday?
Asking.
The day in which the Prime Minister made his speech.
So it came after the Prime Minister's address?
Absolutely.
So the Prime Minister's address was not precipitated by the report hitting Grenada?
No.
Okay.
Not as far as George Mitchell knows. And I have been the one in contact with my St. Lucia counterpart. Well, should I say counterpart, because I'm no longer the Chief Medical Officer, but I know Dr. Belma from, being around, and she's on speed dial. She would answer my call. And yes, we have that kind of relationship, and that is where we got to know. That is when. So the speech by the Prime Minister did not have, well, not say did not have anything to do with it, in the sense that there was absolutely no information about that particular case at that time.
I'll ask a follow-up question later. Ms. Cuffie, some people have gone into panic mode. They think that probably Dr. Mitchell and others have announced that Hurricane Ivan is coming to Grenada all over again. Your thoughts on what you've seen in the public space?
So I would first like to give a little psychological impact where things are concerned. Now, a pandemic is really an invisible disaster, but the effects are just as real as though it were a hurricane. So all of the feelings are there. Some people would have symptoms of headaches. It would affect their diet, their sleep patterns, their daily routines, and those are real effects. You can't grade one higher than the other. I know that one of the definitions of stress, you have triggers and you have stressors. So stress is anything real or imagined that causes your body to go into a state of change. It could be shock. It could be running and taking off with nowhere to go, and we've seen that, right? We've seen a lot of people running. So you have that fight or flight. Those are normal reactions. I want to emphasize that those are normal reactions. Anytime there's a traumatic event, anywhere in your life, you feel a certain way. Your state of mental well-being becomes disturbed. And that's really what's happening.
But Dr. Mitchell and others have made it very clear that there are no cases of COVID-19 in Grenada. So why are we, and please note I'm not saying why are people, why are we still acting out in those ways?
Well, again, as I stated, is a normal sense of thing because it could be real or imagined. If you imagine there was a snake behind your chair, you would jump up.
That is true.
Absolutely, because you imagine it. I can't see the snake. I'm convincing you, Odette, there is no snake. But
why did you choose that example?
I'm not sure. Does that hit a nerve? Do you have a reptile fear or phobia? Okay, but you see, I had no idea. I never even psychoanalyzed you. But look at her. She has changed.
Me too.
Her posture, you too. Right. So there we go. Anything real or imagined changes how you behave.
What's up with the toilet paper purchasing, though?
Well, a sense of one of the major reactions to pandemic is hypervigilance. And toilet paper seems to be the #1 item for hypervigilance.
Why?
Okay? Because
what's the relationship with toilet paper?
Well, you know, generally when you have a regular flu and so, and you stay home and the self-isolation, toilet paper seem to be one of the psychological elements of comfort.
But why not paper towels?
No. That won't do because they're not going into a special place where people have special thoughts and do special things. So the toilet paper is that symbol. And you know, 20 years from now, when we've all crossed over, we can sit and laugh that toilet paper was that psychological element of comfort. You know, a baby has a comfort blanket that they would not release and carry with them, and you have to literally coax them out of it. This is what toilet paper is to most people right now.
Thank you so much for the explanation, Grenadians. Let's see if we could release the toilet paper syndrome. Dr. Mitchell, you had spoken about the case in St. Lucia, the person having visited Grenada and then went back to St. Lucia. And some people are saying, so didn't anybody notice that she had symptoms?
Yeah, because apparently, based on what we know, and I did not speak to her husband directly, but I got the number for him. And she was interviewed by that team that I mentioned, Dr. Shauna and the guys from SGU. And what they said was that that woman was apparently ill even before she came to Grenada and sought medical attention in the UK from her GP. He probably diagnosed her to have a throat infection, gave her some antibiotics. She felt better for a bit and decided to come to Grenada. When she got here on the 29th, she probably at that time did not feel well again, but she still decided to attend one of the cricket matches with her husband. The fact of the matter, and what we are gleaning, is that that woman was not really sick. So she was not feeling well, but she was able to, she was not bedridden per se. And apparently all she had, according to the reports that I got, was a dry cough.
And you mentioned a dry cough as one of the symptoms. And we're going to cross right now to Dr. Glen Richard Owes, the president of St. George's University, and he's an infectious disease specialist. Dr. Owes, again, thank you so much for joining us. And we're looking at the symptoms. That British visitor, her symptom was a dry cough, as we just heard from Dr. Mitchell. And people might be looking to you as the doctor on call tonight to tell us what are some of the symptoms, what should people be looking for?
Well, the tricky part with this virus is at the beginning, many people don't have any symptoms at all. Recall that probably 80% of the people who are infected either have no symptoms or have very mild symptoms that don't bring them to the attention of the health profession. So one of the difficult parts with this virus is that because of that, a lot of people could be walking around transmitting the virus even though they're not sick. When people get sick with the virus, and I'm sorry, I have actually allergies in case you're worried that I'm coughing because I have COVID-19, excuse me. it really appears to be much like any mild respiratory infection, including influenza. And remember, we're still in the flu season. So things like cough, things like headache, not feeling well, sore throat, etc., is common between COVID-19 and a variety of other viruses. So as the disease progresses, individuals get more characteristic findings of this, and that includes being short of breath. Now, being short of breath is not a common symptom for people that have standard, if you will, influenza or other respiratory infections. And they often develop a fever, although that fever is not always sustained. It maybe goes up and down, et cetera. But generally speaking, they will have a fever. So the development of respiratory symptoms like being short of breath and, as we described previously, a dry cough would all suggest that that individual is going to need to seek some medical attention. And so that's when those cases usually come to the attention of physicians. And at that point, you try to rule out whether they have a milder viral illness, whether they have true influenza, which is still circulating, or should they think that they're progressing in that direction, they would get a test for COVID-19. And that's basically the natural history of the disease. People are usually not symptomatic for 4 or 5 days after they acquire the virus. They generally then get this mild respiratory infection, and then they begin to progress, those that are going to get in trouble with the virus, toward increasing difficulty breathing and increasing respiratory difficulty. And of course, once they become hospitalized, a subset of that individuals ultimately end up in the intensive care unit.
Some people are asking for your thoughts on when you think this may peak in the Caribbean region.
Well, I think here's the good news. You're clearly basically ahead of the curve. I mean, obviously, this virus started in Wuhan, China, and spread to several locations in Asia, including Korea and Japan. It then obviously became a major health problem in Europe, and you've watched what's happened in Italy and Spain and Germany, and now more recently in England. And obviously, this has also come to the United States, and there are several cities in the United States that we think that there's fairly significant community-based transmission. Now, fortunately, the Caribbean basin seems to be a bit behind that curve, so that ministers of health and various health organizations have the advantage of seeing what went before them, and they can often now take good public health measures now, even before the virus actually arrives on their shores.
Thank you so much. Let's cross over now to Barbados, where we have Stetson Babb. He's the head of news and current affairs, Starcom. So, Stetson, tell us what's been happening in Barbados.
Well, actually, some of the responses seem quite similar to what you're describing in Grenada. To some extent, what you call panic buying, where people have been snapping up, well, what they consider the essentials, almost as though a hurricane is coming. Things like, strangely enough, toilet paper being flying off the shelves, of course, sanitary items, or rather items that will help them sanitize their hands, sanitizing lotion or liquid, alcohol, etc. By the way, I would suggest that that response has largely to do with two factors. As you well know, the global pandemic has the potential to significantly disrupt the global supply chain. I think that people are possibly anticipating there could be shortages of critical items somewhere down the road and are seeking to hoard or to stockpile those items. There's also some speculation that there may be a commercial objective here, that people may again be in anticipation of a shortage of some critical items, stockpiling those items perhaps to resell those later at a higher markup. And today the minister and the Ministry of Finance made it quite clear the government has been looking at the situation and is threatening to reimpose price controls if that persists. Now, at the national level, though, the Prime Minister, Mr. Motley, has been meeting with various stakeholders across the country, including the media, including the private sector, the trade unions, the other political parties, the opposition, and of course the private sector. And they've rolled out, in fact, a pandemic response plan has been prepared by the Ministry of Health. That was presented to Cabinet last Thursday. And they've also appointed what you could call a pandemic preparedness czar, an individual who has worked with the British government and spent 4 years working with the Ebola outbreak in Sierra Leone. And they have also started to put a number of other measures in place. In fact, in anticipation of what could result from this, they're also looking to fast track what they felt would be a 6-month plan to increase both the production of food and in the manufacture locally of certain critical items. The Prime Minister has stressed, first of all, that there are no confirmed or reported cases of COVID-19 in Barbados. She wants to stress that, first of all. And she, in fact, in an interview she did today, she stressed, she was asked, because the point was made that there is a suspicion among some people in Barbados that perhaps there are cases and they're being kept from the public. And the Prime Minister was quite forthright in saying, if there were cases, I would tell you, there are no confirmed cases in Barbados. But what she says she wants to see is a disciplined national response to this pandemic, to the threat of COVID-19 in Barbados. And they started to put a number of measures in place, ensuring they have the medical capacity to deal with that. But like I said, there's a pandemic response preparedness team. They've been meeting with all the various stakeholders, and there's a whole effort to ensure that Barbadians are aware of the precautionary preventative measures that they can adopt and that those are adhered to. She announced today, for instance, that all major public events, large gatherings, those people responsible for planning those events and executing those events, including the government, those events should be postponed for at least 3 months. 3 months, that is, from an economic perspective, even though in fiscal perspective. Yes.
Can we get back to those after a commercial break? The producers are indicating that we need to take a commercial break, so we could get back to some of the measures, if you don't mind. Thank you so much for your understanding. This is Beyond the Headlines on GBN Television. We're looking at COVID-19, the pandemic that has been threatening the world, disrupting services. We will be right back after this break. Stay with us.
Every day with more plays and bigger prizes to be won. It's a 4-digit game with all the bet types you already know and much, much more. From 0000 to 9999. Choose your 4 numbers and place your bet from 11 different bet types. Choose from inline, 4 different mixes, first 3, last 3, and 4 different backup options too. Best of all, it starts at just $1, except for backups, which starts at $2. Win as much as $5,000 with a $1 inline bet and as much as $6,200 in a $2 backup bet. Imagine $50,000 for a winning $10 inline bet. There's definitely more to win with the Daily Cash 4. More plays, bigger prizes, twice per day, Mondays to Saturdays. Must be 18 and over to participate. NLA, making your dreams come true while supporting sports, culture, and nation building.
Welcome back, viewers and listeners. It's time for the National Lottery Authority's Lotto draw number 3074 for this evening, Monday, the 16th of March, 2020. The estimated jackpot is $158,000. Of course, joining me once again is Miss Makiba Bain, as she's representing PKF Accountants and Business Advisors. Well, let's find out what the free ticket letter will be. If you got your tickets, good luck. All right, check your tickets. The free ticket letter is... All right. Free ticket letter for this evening is the letter F as in free. That's F as in free. Well, it's time to reveal tonight's 5 winning numbers for $158,000. Best of luck. And the first number is... First number up is 30. Second number up is 28. Third. number 8. What? Fourth number is 5, and the fifth and final. Tonight's fifth and final is 14. So we got to recap, and you got to recheck your tickets. Firstly, let's check the free ticket letter. That letter was F as in free. That's F as in free. And tonight's winning numbers for $158,000. Let's recap. First number was 30. That's 3030. The second number 28, 2828. Third number 8088. The fourth was 5055. The fifth and final 14. That's 1414. If you have these numbers, you are a happy person. Congratulations to you. You've won. It has been Lotto. Play and win a lot. Well, don't forget, get those tickets. Tune in tomorrow and continue to support sports, culture, and nation building. Have a good night.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6 a bigger jackpot game.
Now you love Super 6 even more. With more money to the jackpot galore. Play more, win more, have more fun. With more jackpot money, Super 6 is my number one. With the new and improved Super 6 game, the jackpot keep growing and growing and growing.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6 a bigger jackpot game. Super 6, bigger jackpots, more chances to win.
Looking for a wide selection of uniquely styled furniture that are made from solid timber and performance fabric?
This is lovely. It sure is. Look at this.
Visit Hubbard's Furniture Department at the first floor of the main store, Carenage. Your selection will certainly provide comfort in your home and office. Hubbard's. Quality service. Affordable prices.
Use Glen. It washing cleaner than ever. Oh mama, oi. Oh mama, oi. In every household. Must have it, oi. Highly effective. Stain removal, lemon freshness. Antibacterial washing powder. Fresh and clean. Fresh and clean. When I put on me clothes, me must win. When I wash me clothes, no other detergent could ever wash me clothes like this.
Now buy 3 bottles of Place dishwashing liquid for only $8. Available at Best for Less Supermarket, Eat Fresh Supermarket, M&C Joe's Supermarket, Home Pride Supermarket, The Food Fairs, Carenage and Grandans, Roberts Enterprise, Springs Food Mart, and Charlo's Supermarket.
Other Place products available: hand sanitizer, fabric softener, hand washing liquid, dishwashing liquid, and toilet cleaners. Distributed by Fortune Foods Company Limited, Tempe St. George.
Total is one of the world's largest oil companies with a top quality line of lubricants. Total Lubricants has a full product line from passenger cars, motorcycle, heavy industrial equipment, mining, trucking, agriculture, and manufacturing machines and vehicles. Total Lubricants, winning championships in motorsports, including Formula One and World Rally Championships. Total Lubricants are available at all Rubis service stations, leading automotive shops, and distributed by Huggins.
Why not stay in, turn off the alarm clock, and sleep some more on your perfect mattress from Quartz? For the widest range of mattresses from the world's best brands, the best value guaranteed. Shop today and let our sleep experts help you to decide on the best option to suit your needs. At Quartz, we don't just sell mattresses, we're offering you the best night's sleep. So, sleep in a little on your new mattress from Quartz. Quartz, bringing value home.
Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. We have been looking at COVID-19, the pandemic, the world watches. And we are going to go again to Dr. Glen Richard Oles. He is the president of St. George's University and an infectious disease specialist. Dr. Oles, there has been discussion about how do you treat people with COVID-19. We understand that Cuba has said that it is on its way to the development, or has been already making available, a vaccine for this?
Well, at the current time, there is no tested and effective vaccine for this virus, and there is no tested and effective drugs to treat this disease. So treatment right now is pretty much supportive of individuals, very much like what happened in the Ebola epidemic. As you know, given enough time, science can develop tools, and I'll use that as an example. We had to deal with the Ebola outbreak several years ago by good public health measures and very supportive therapy treatment to keep people alive until they basically recover based on their body's own immune system. Now, subsequently, we've developed both new treatments for Ebola and a vaccine against Ebola. But at the current time, there is active work going, and obviously they are attempting to short track the development of a vaccine and drugs, but we do not have effective drugs or vaccines, and I don't think that they will be available in the near future.
Are the gloves and masks effective?
Yes, they are, but we have to be careful about what we mean by masks. So the standard masks that you see people wearing are useful if a person is symptomatic, is coughing or sneezing, to basically decrease that person's ability to contaminate the environment. Since this virus is principally transmitted with lipid droplets from coughs and sneezes, and obviously putting a mask on a person that's sick will cut down on that transmission. But many people wear those masks thinking it prevents them from getting the infection, and no, it doesn't prevent them from getting the infection. And in fact, it's a two-edged sword, because people that are wearing masks are more likely to touch their mouth and face, which would actually increase transmission. So that generally speaking, we should not recommend people wearing masks that are otherwise well. If people are sick and are coughing or sneezing, they should wear a mask to protect others around them. Now, masks, so-called N95 masks, and other basically masks that are used by healthcare professionals, they're part of the gear that healthcare professionals wear to keep from getting infected themselves when they're in close contact with people that obviously have COVID-19. And so you can see they wear an N95 mask, they wear goggles, they wear a full paper outfit, they wear gloves, and they wear booties on their shoes. That's to protect them from acquiring the disease, because healthcare providers are within that, if you will, safety zone that we are attempting to achieve in social distancing, which is to try to keep people at least a meter apart from each other, and even better to be 2 meters or about 6 feet from each other. And obviously healthcare professionals have to be closer than that in the care of patients. So they wear that type of mask, that type of protective gear.
Thank you so much. Dr. Mitchell, as we look at what is happening in Grenada, there were some measures that were announced by the government on Friday, and I think the listing was updated this evening. For instance, I think we have a PowerPoint presentation which has been showing some of the measures. I think funerals are being impacted, going over to this whole thing of limiting people getting into crowded spaces. You want to update us on what some of those measures are?
Yes, I don't have the entire list in my head, but those measures are very similar to those announced by Jamaica,
yeah, and Trinidad.
Trinidad today. We are not very much different in terms of the measures. I think they're more, this current list tends to concentrate on and here you have them. We've canceled the cruise season, funerals to be private as much as possible. No happy hour, no funeral procession. I know this is a big one. Schools are, of course, currently closed. And we're, of course, doing all the contact tracing, etc. But I'm positive that in the upcoming days that there will be some more granular announcements in terms of measures that the government intends to take in relation to the changing scenario of COVID-19.
One of the measures there, Ms. Cuffie, relates to the closure of schools. Yes. And that has been a major concern for parents and the children. We've seen some of them roaming the streets already today.
Yeah. All right, so the Ministry of Education has met with principals, and principals have been tasked, as well as the ministry. We are working with ICT, IT personnel, and they have been tasked with minimizing any kind of negative effects with contact time. So we are especially concerned about the students who have exit educational standardized testing. So we look at CPEA, we look at CSEC, we look at CAPE. And what the ministry has done, the ministry has put together a task force with all kinds of persons on it, various stakeholders, to help do this. As a matter of fact, there are some schools I've noticed who have gone ahead and have posted their assignments based on the curriculum on e-learning platforms, which was encouraged, and that's one of the ways that we have gone to ensure that students have that virtual contact time. We also want to encourage parents to keep abreast of happenings. You are all on chats. You know, most schools, you know, parents of different class levels, they are on chats. Get on your chat, follow the information, and please stay away from all kinds of information coming to your phone. It's going to overload it, and you want to have that kind of mental control, okay? And technology can do that for you, as well as it can go the other way, just overwhelm you. So the Ministry of Education has put together, you know, this wonderful team. We also have a psychosocial response team, so parents can get in touch with us and get some help. Right? And one of the things we want to make sure that you do, monitor the children, monitor the students, get the important email addresses, get the important phone numbers, stay in touch. We are here to help, and there's more to come because it's not a finished product. We're looking at getting better and getting even more high-tech to ensure that students stay on task and so that they are successful, because we expect great results in June, and we know it will happen. So we want you to calmly and normally proceed. They have just changed their position. They're no longer in the classroom, but we have virtual learning, and we want you to embrace that because it's a positive change, and it's an opportunity for them to show that they understand the value of studies.
But some parents may say, well, my child does not have access to electronic means of communicating. They don't have a computer at home. They don't have WhatsApp where probably the teachers could send some kind of assignments to them. What happens in those cases?
Well, we can also be contacted. There are other, you know, officers in the Ministry of Education who can answer that with more high-tech language, but we know that supports are in place, right, for that to happen. And if that is the case where it's not readily available, we have persons who can answer those questions. So you can invite somebody else back, and they can share those details with how the students can get their hands on a device to work.
So, Dr. Mitchell, one of the things that Ms. Cuffie has been concerned about and addressing is this whole thing of staying calm. As she mentioned, you know, stay away from the negative information. There was mass hysteria almost on the weekend with reports that a plane load of people had touched down here, and possibly they came from one of the COVID hotspots. And people are saying that the government is reckless and irresponsible. What is the government's response to this? We know that a statement was issued. But what officially is the government's position on this? Where did the plane come from to begin with?
Well, let me just back up a little bit, Odette, because I have the information.
You do?
Yes, I do.
Good.
That plane that is sort of like being called the Chinese plane, that's how it is called, was the very same plane that was here 2 weeks ago. On, I think it was March 1st, that plane that was turned away. that was the plane. I think it was a hysteric kind of scenario, because there was the first plane that came about a month or two ago, and then this one came. This one was swiftly dealt with. That was the same plane that was turned back. Prior to that, it came from the UK, and then it went to Cape Verde and to Grenada on March 1st. The plane then went to Barbados, went to Panama, and went to several cities in the US before coming back to Grenada on the 14th. In other words, that was a good 14 days. A good 14 days of that plane being here the first time. And what we know, don't forget, what we know about the symptomology of COVID is that if you are symptomatic, within 14 days you would show up. But even to make sure that we're dealing with the same aircraft, the manifest of that aircraft was scrutinized. In other words, in the first place, that plane did not go to any hotspot. So let's clear that up. That plane did not go to any hotspot. And that plane, the 14 days had elapsed and the plane came back. And how do we know? We know from the plane's whatever number that they have, and the list of the names of persons were the same persons that was on the plane.
So is that chartered flight that's bringing a special group of people? What? Yes,
apparently. I don't know the details about how the plane was bought or who actually owns the plane, etc., but we know who the passengers are.
So did the passengers disembark in Grenada on Saturday?
Yes.
They're on a special mission. Do you know why they're here?
No, that's that's above my grade here. But I can tell you that based on what I'm hearing, I did not go so granular as to ask each and every person what that person's designation was and what they were actually here for. But what on the ground is that they are a group of investors, as far as I understand. But what is important to note is that those were the same persons who were here 2 weeks ago. And they received the very same protocol in terms of our port health to ensure that what we were dealing with were these people, and that there was no need for quarantine or any of that. But out of the abundance of caution, our folks ensured that those persons went to a location and left the following day.
So they came in on, let's say, Friday night and left on Saturday?
Yes.
And when they came in on the 1st, they came for an extended period, or they were in transit? What really was
that detail I really can't tell you.
While we're on that, I want to go to Stetson, Barbados for a little bit, but first we go to Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz, there has been call for the shuttering of borders. I think Trinidad made some announcement today. Your thoughts on that in terms of curbing the spread of COVID-19?
What was that again? Bottled water?
No, sorry. The closure of some borders, like not allowing...
closure of bars, and that's all part of social distancing.
Borders. That means declining aircrafts and borders.
Borders,
I'm sorry.
Borders. Well, you know, obviously, you have to look at the countries that have been ahead of the Caribbean islands, and obviously, the United States has closed to traffic from certain hotspots around the world. And even some countries have actually closed their borders. I think some countries in Europe have. You know, that's a decision that has to be made based on what the situation is in each individual country. You know, I think that Grenada is in a fortunate position. They basically are, as I mentioned before, ahead of the curve. And even countries, let's say like Jamaica and Trinidad, which have small numbers of cases, you know, I think that they have to make that decision, you know, on a real-time basis. But, you know, travel restrictions, you know, are a difficult thing to do in countries that have large tourism as their base. But, you know, if the situation from a public health standpoint changes, those are decisions that people have to make. They're difficult decisions. But I'd point out that in public health decisions, the best decisions always get accused of being overreactions because the very decisions have prevented a lot of people from getting infected. So, you know, I think so far, I think the countries in the Caribbean have acted very responsibly, and they have learned from some of the countries that were slow to respond, that responding quickly and aggressively is probably a good strategy.
Thanks. Stetson, quickly, can you tell us in terms of your borders, what's happening? Your cruise ship, I think your Prime Minister said that Barbados is still open for business. Or has there been any change in the last 48 or so hours?
As a matter of fact, the Minister and the Ministry of Finance very pointedly said in Parliament today that at this stage, Barbados is not closing its borders. He felt that would be a hasty decision at this point in time, but that the situation was very fluid and therefore that was liable to change at some point as circumstances warrant. Now, they've outlined, I think, 4 stages of preparedness and response to the threat. And this said, they insist they are at stage 0, surveillance and preparedness. And the ultimate stage, if there is a widespread, obviously there are confirmed cases and widespread transmission in country, human to human, of COVID-19, the ultimate decision would be a state of emergency down at stage 3, but they are currently at stage 0. And at this point, at least, the borders remain open.
Yeah, Dr. Mitchell, in the Grenadian context, sorry, Stetson, sorry. I just wanted to ask Dr. Mitchell, in the Grenadian context, what stage are you at?
We did not develop our strategy based on stages. We have a 5-point strategy, and that we're looking at important areas like awareness and education, surveillance and monitoring, building partnerships, making sure that our at-risk population is safe as they possibly can. And the number 5 strategic line for us is to building our internal capacity. So we have developed those lines, and we are developing on them daily as the situation changes. We are implementing under those 5 strategic lines measures to prepare us as best as we can.
What strategy is there for your frontline health workers to ensure their safety?
Oh yes, that comes under strategic line number 5, building both internal capacity where our workers are concerned and our institutions per se. And there's a lot of work going on in terms of training, education, actually doing the preparation, doffing and donning, or as they call it, in terms of the use of PPEs. And there is a plan that the folks at the hospital, Dr. Dolan and the team up there are working with to ensure that the healthcare professionals that are on the front line are as safe as we possibly can get them. And we really want to make sure that none of them are victims of the virus. They're working on that as well as to prepare our institutions.
What is the strategy as far as emergency care? So we have what we call the accident and emergency department. If somebody shows up with symptoms, they go to and forgive me to go back to my childhood days, we go back to that same one emergency department?
No. We've been preaching, and I like the word preaching because I grew up in church. We've been preaching that if you come down with anything that resembles COVID-19, that you call our hotline. So we're discouraging folks to go into public areas where they can potentially, in other words, get on a bus, go to the ER where you probably have other persons, and be sneezing and coughing and sharing the virus.
But I'm sick and I'm desperate and I need help, and the next best automatic thing for me to do, the psychologist here would tell you, if there's a snake, what I do, I would go to the A&E, Dr. Mitchell.
That is why education, that's why what we're doing here is so important, Odette. so important. So we want you, and as Dr. Oles was saying, COVID-19 don't come like a thief in the night and just engulf you like that. It does not happen like that. You develop symptoms similar to, if not exactly the same as influenza, snuffy nose, cough, sore throat, etc., and then it may get worse on you. So we are asking you, to call, let us do the interview with you, and take it from there. It does not move from, okay, I have the COVID now, and so I need to go to the hospital now. That does not happen with COVID-19. Neither does it happen with any cold or any respiratory illness. So I think that is, and that's why I'm happy to be sitting here. And during the commercial break, we were saying that more of that is really, really, really needed, the way people respond, because there is a perception, and I think this is driven by what we're seeing in television and so forth, people falling down and die. That is not really, really, really the case. And there was a video voice note that went around just, I think, was on Friday. That was, one of the most, for me, hilarious but serious thing, where someone was saying, "Oh, all you, the thing is here. Look, somebody fall down in the market, in the bus terminal." That is not the case. That is not how it presents.
Okay. So as we get ready to wrap up, Dr. Oles, what are your closing thoughts for the Grenadian public and people who are viewing and listening to us from across the world right now?
Well, I think it's worth talking about who is at greatest risk. Now, there are no cases in Grenada, but we have to think ahead. The people that are at risk with this virus are people who are over the age of 60, particularly people over the age of 70 or over the age of 80, and people with underlying medical conditions. And those are the most vulnerable people in any society. And we need to keep them safe as our top priority, because younger people, although occasionally younger people can get pretty sick, in general, younger people don't suffer, don't die from the disease, and don't in general need to be hospitalized. So our vigilance around social spacing is really mostly to protect the most vulnerable people in our society. So elderly people, and by the way, I fall into that category, should try to basically protect themselves by being particularly vigilant about staying away from crowds and other people, etc. And the younger people in the society, it's not just so they don't get sick. Yes, it'll help they won't get sick, but they're protecting the older and more vulnerable members of our society. So all of us need to follow these precautions, not just for ourselves, but for the vulnerable people in our society. And we need to start doing that now, even before the virus comes, because that's the group that will suffer the most and will have the highest mortality rate.
Dr. Oles and Dr. Mitchell, I'm coming to you, but we have a slide which looks at the various Caribbean islands and the number of cases. As we get ready to wrap it up, probably you want to take us through that. And like you said, that there are no confirmed cases in Grenada as of now. So we'd ask the producer to assist us with that slide, looking at the various Caribbean islands. So I think that looks like Martinique with 15 cases, one death.
Yes, Jamaica 15, no deaths. Dominican Republic 11, no death. Is that?
Guyana, 7 cases, 1 death.
Right. That person more than likely had some underlying condition.
Okay.
And the rest of countries, except
Guadeloupe
for...
and, there's only 1 death in, that looks like Cayman Islands?
Cayman Island, yeah. So that we have not had a lot of, demise in the region, and the numbers are relatively small. And in most cases, there were imported cases, and there is a lack of community transmission thus far, based on what we know. And as such, you know, I would say kudos to Caribbean public health officials. You know, my fellow CMOs, well, fellow CMOs, my ex-CMOs, they're doing a wonderful job. You know, I am
you'll
proud.
never be a former health practitioner.
You know, I am really, really, really proud. And Dr. O said it, you know, we are ahead of the curve. We are taking measures to limit the spread. He spoke about the at-risk population. And this is our strategic point number 4, that we are doing all that we can to limit the spread to that population. And I have said it on every show that I've been on, and I've said it to all the groups that I've met with, that it is the younger folks that are going to bring home the virus. So we need to be responsible. We need to protect our loved ones, and that is actually crucial. And we are going to be doing more and more to ensure we have announced measures as well to deal with that, to try and curb the spread at homes, etc. And so we would be fine-tuning these measures to ensure that our loved ones or at-risk population is guarded or are guarded as best as we possibly can guard them.
Good, and we will close with words from Ms. Cuffie, but just let's get Stetson, Babb out of Barbados. Your country's name does not show up on that list, and I'm sure you're feeling proud. Stetson?
Well, it's nothing to be proud about. It's really a threat that faces the entire globe and clearly threatens the Caribbean as well. I think we have appeared to have been fortunate so far, but there's expectation that sooner or later, the virus will spread throughout the Caribbean, and the best we can do at this stage is to be prepared and take the appropriate precautions.
Thank you so much, Stetson. And Shauna Cuffie, the last word is yours tonight.
All right, so I just want to encourage the listening public and everybody else on the internet across the world, just a few coping strategies. One, engage in some breathing techniques, relax. Okay, exercise, move your body, it's very important. Avoid excessive amounts of alcohol and caffeine. All right, don't drug up yourself and your system. Make a list of helpful email addresses, contact numbers, schools, your doctors, etc. Drink a lot of water, it's very calming. Eat your fruits and vegetables. Limit your exposure to graphic news and stories and images. That is a major source of stressor. Get accurate, timely information about the disease from credible sources. Okay? Seek out and follow the advice of experts. For parents, bolster your children's life skills because they're at home. Work on what we call the broader EF, which is the executive functioning. Help them to set goals, help them to manage conflict, help them to, solve problems. And draw upon your spiritual and personal beliefs for comfort. And I want you to have a very calming, tranquil, wonderful ride through this, observing all precautions, and know that there are some of us out there you can call on us if you need to, and let us all stay together, join hands, all Grenadians, all regional partners, as we move through this.
Thank you so much. And there you've had it, ladies and gentlemen. That brings a wrap on tonight's Beyond the Headlines. We say a very special thank you to Dr. George Mitchell, coordinator of the COVID-19 committee, and he's in charge of the response initiative. Shauna Cuffie, clinical counselor, Ministry of Education. We were joined live, and we still have Dr. Glen, president St. George's University, and he's also an infectious disease specialist. We're sending the wave because we can't do a handshake. Earlier we had Juhel Browne, political editor, TV6 Trinidad, and also Milton Walker, group head of news and sports, the RJR Gleaner group out of Jamaica, and Stetson Babb, our loyal soldier, staying with us, Starcom Network. We want to thank you so much, Stetson, and we also want to thank especially St. George's University, who have which has collaborated with us. We did have at 8 o'clock this evening a special address by Dr. Charles Mordecai. And we also want to thank Ms. Clement sincerely for having worked with us over the weekend when everybody was at rest and probably trying to chill but still stressed. Ms. Clement did walk us through this path, and we will be repeating those comments. St. George's University has made it clear that they are here to stay. And the fact that we saw the students being sent home, it was in keeping with international best practices. And so they're not saying that goodbye, but they're saying when this pandemic clears, the students will be back and it will be business as usual. And so we want to thank Dr. Olds, thank Ms. Clement, thank Dr. Charles Mordecai, the staff at St. George University, and to all of our business partners who have been collaborating with us. The Ministry of Health, Kevin Frederick. I've never seen someone's phone ring off the hook like that. Kevin, we salute you. And to the entire team who's been working the nation through this, the production staff at the GBN, we owe you a debt of gratitude. To all the soldiers, keep soldiering on. We'll get through this. Let's just stay calm. I'm your host, Odette Campbell, saying we'll be around again next Monday on Beyond the Headlines. And folks, there's no handshake. There's no handshake. We send the elbow. And to our guests, we send the elbow.